A wealthy bachelor's life spirals after a night with his maid leads to an unexpected pregnancy, forcing him to choose between true love and toxic loyalty. Brian had been a bachelor for a very long time. One day, his mother called to thank him for a gift he had sent her. She then reminded him that his younger cousin had gotten married, yet Brian, who was 7 years older, still hadn't settled down. She even offered to find him a wife from the village, saying she wanted to see her grandchildren before she died. But Brian dismissed the idea. He told her that village girls were not in his league, and that he was waiting for a woman who would love him truly, though he hadn't found the right one yet. Meanwhile, Ada, Brian's friend, welcomed her best friend China Nai, who had come from the village to seek a better life in the city. Grateful, China Nai thanked Ada for letting her stay at her place while she searched for a job. One day, while outside a shop, Brian saw a lady named Ease. He introduced himself, but she brushed him off and walked into the supermarket. Unwilling to give up, Brian followed her inside. While China Nai was out applying for jobs, Ada came and told her that there was a vacancy at a hotel down the street. China Nai went there, met the restaurant owner, was interviewed, and got the job, but she was to start the next day. At his office, Brian decided to call Ease again. He sweet-talked her into going on a date, and eventually, she agreed. Ease, being a smooth talker herself, was impressed when Brian showered her with compliments and promised to take good care of her. At the restaurant, things took a dark turn. A rude customer spanked China Nai. She slapped him in return and warned him never to touch her again. The restaurant owner came to investigate. China Nai explained, but the customer denied the incident. Without considering her side, the angry owner fired her. Later, Brian took Ease to his house. The maid welcomed them and introduced herself. Brian gave the maid a day off to spend time alone with Ease. China Nai returned home and narrated her ordeal to Ada, explaining how unfairly she had been treated. Ada consoled her, telling her that another job opportunity would surely come. While Brian was at work, he received a call from his mother, who said she wasn't feeling well and planned to visit him soon. Brian welcomed the idea, saying it would be the perfect time to introduce her to Ease, his girlfriend. China Nai continued job hunting, walking from shop to shop. She met Mr. Osays, who offered her a job, though the pay was low. Desperate, she accepted. But when he insisted she bring her documents to his house, she sensed something was wrong. When she questioned it, Mr. Osays accused her of being rude. Realizing his intentions, she declined the job and walked away. Back at Brian's house, the maid informed him that her husband had found work in another city, and she would be leaving the job to move with him. Brian, being a kind employer, congratulated her and gave her a farewell gift. Ease, however, was upset, wondering how they would replace such a hard-working maid. Brian reassured her that they would find someone new. Ada came home from work and asked China Nai if she could do house chores. When she said yes, Ada gave her the number of a friend who worked at a domestic agency that could help her find work. Brian and Ease began interviewing for a new maid. When the first applicant arrived, Ease pretended Brian was her brother. The woman flirted with Brian, which infuriated Ease, and she threw her out. The second lady was dressed provocatively, prompting Ease to cover Brian's eyes. The third wasn't even interviewed before being dismissed. Then, China Nai walked in, wearing outdated clothes. Ease, recognizing she was from the village, hired her immediately, certain she would not be competition. China Nai cooked a delicious meal, impressing both Brian and Ease. But Ease warned her sternly, she was there only to cook and clean. Brian was off limits. If she tried seducing him, Ease would not hesitate to stab her. That evening, China Nai told Ada about her new job. Curious, Ada asked if Brian was handsome. China Nai admitted he was, but added that his girlfriend had warned her not to go near him. Ada encouraged her to seduce Brian, saying it might be her only chance to escape poverty. But China Nai said she wasn't interested in a relationship and would focus only on her work. Brian was watching football when Ease walked in. She questioned what joy he got from watching football. Brian told her it was the only thing that brought him happiness. Ease got angry, asking if she didn't bring him joy. Brian apologized and reassured her of his love. She then asked for 300,000 Nigerian nairas to upgrade her studio, and Brian agreed without hesitation. Back at the office, Brian presents his work to an investor, who tells him he's impressed, but the final approval will come from the main investor. Later, over dinner, Brian informs Eze that his mother will be coming to visit for a month. Eze is surprised and questions why she needs to visit when they speak every day. She complains that a whole month is too long. Brian explains that his mother wants to bond with her. Eze then asks for Nigerian naira 1 million, saying she wants to help treat her sick family members. Though Brian tells her it's a lot of money, he eventually agrees to give it to her. When Brian's mother arrives, he introduces her to both Eze and China Nai. His mother compliments Eze, saying she looks beautiful and expresses hope that they'll get along during her stay. As Brian leads his mother upstairs, Eze offers to cook dinner. Later that evening, as they eat, Joyce compliments the meal. She then announces she'll be visiting her sister the next day, as it's been long since they last saw each other. Eze also mentions that she'll be traveling for work the next day, leaving Brian alone in the house. After dinner, Brian and his mother leave the table. Eze pulls China Nai aside and warns her not to tell anyone that she was the one who cooked the food. Unbeknownst to them, Brian's mother overhears everything. The next day, Eze wishes Brian a good weekend and leaves. His mother also leaves but tells Brian before going that they need to discuss something important soon. Later, Brian receives a call from the investor, who congratulates him he got the job. Excited, Brian tells China Nai to bring champagne so they can celebrate. She initially declines the drink, saying she doesn't consume alcohol. But when Brian offers her a raise, she hesitantly agrees. They both get drunk and carry the celebration upstairs, where one thing leads to another. The next scene opens with Brian telling China Nai that she's fired. He says he'll pay her a full year's salary, but he cannot live with her under the same roof after what happened. China Nai is shocked and confused but has no choice. Back home, Aiden notices China Nai is disturbed. She asks what's wrong, and China Nai lies, saying she was fired because Brian didn't like her food. Ada is puzzled, as she remembers China Nai saying just days ago how much Brian enjoyed her cooking. Days later, China Nai returns from a short trip and finds Brian lost in thought. He barely notices her presence. She asks what's wrong, but he says nothing. Just then, Brian's mother walks in. They greet each other, and Eze enters the kitchen to prepare food. Moments later, she asks Brian where China Nai is. Brian responds that China Nai resigned. Eze is shocked and asks what they will do, knowing she can't cook. Brian tells her to figure it out. As Brian heads to his room, his mother stops him. She asks if he is really sure about marrying Eze. Brian says he loves her. But his mother warns him love alone is not enough to sustain a marriage. Weeks later, Ada finds China Nai lying in bed with a high fever. She rushes her to the hospital, where the doctor confirms that she is pregnant. China Nai is stunned and confesses that Brian is the father. She says she doesn't know what to do. Ada advises her to inform Brian and insists that he must take responsibility. China Nai visits Brian's house. Eze assumes she's there to beg for her job. As China Nai tries to speak, Ada bursts out and reveals that she's pregnant. Brian's mother comes downstairs and asks who is pregnant. Eze, furious, slaps Brian and storms out. Brian tries to go after her, but his mother stops him. Brian then turns to China Nai and denies the pregnancy, insisting that she should get rid of it. His mother steps in and declares the baby will not be aborted, and that Brian will take care of both mother and child. She threatens to leave and never speak to him again if he refuses. Cornered, Brian agrees to let China Nai stay in the house and keep the baby but demands a test to confirm the pregnancy. Later, Brian visits Eze and apologizes. He says he was drunk and didn't mean to sleep with China Nai. He swears he doesn't love her and wants to spend his life with Eze. But Eze refuses to forgive him. She throws him out and warns him never to come back. Back at home, Brian's mother advises China Nai on how to win his heart. When Brian walks in, he greets his mother but ignores China Nai. His mother encourages her to give him time, assuring her that he's just angry. She suggests China Nai bring him food to his room. When China Nai enters with the tray and sits on his bed, Brian yells at her to leave. He later tells his mother that he knows what she's trying to do but he will never love a common maid. Despite this, Brian goes to Eze again. He pleads for another chance and offers Nigerian naira 3 million when she asks for Nigerian naira 2 million in exchange for forgiveness. Meanwhile, China Nai calls Ada, saying she's tired of trying. Brian only sees her as a maid. Ada encourages her to change her dressing and become more attractive. She reminds her that character and cooking skills are also powerful charms. China Nai goes shopping and returns dressed like a glamorous Instagram model. Brian's mother compliments her and even offers to cook dinner so China doesn't ruin her makeup. Brian walks in, looks at her, says nothing, and walks upstairs. His mother brings him food and tells him she's heading back to the village. Before she leaves, she warns him never to mistreat China or send her away. She bids China farewell and tells her to take care of Brian and her grandchild. Later, Brian and Eve cuddle. She insists he must send China away if she's to return to his house. Brian refuses, saying his mother suffered too much raising him and he won't upset her. Eve mocks him for being a mama's boy and then asks for Nigerian naira 1.5 million. Brian complains that he gave her money just 2 days ago, but she convinces him she needs it for suppliers. He sends the money even as her phone keeps ringing and she keeps declining the call. China tells Ada that Brian still isn't attracted to her despite her efforts. Ada urges her not to give up. One evening, as Brian is watching football, China joins him, wearing a Liverpool jersey. She shouts and cheers with him like a die-hard fan knowing it's something he loves. For the first time, Brian enjoys her company. When their team scores, they hug longer than expected. He even wishes her good night gently. Their bond starts to grow. Brian even slips and asks how her day went, something he never did. China prepares snacks before matches and gives him a jersey to match hers. One evening, after watching a game together, Brian apologizes for how he treated her and asks if they can start over. While cleaning the house, China receives a call from Brian's mother, who asks if Brian is treating her well. China says everything is fine. Meanwhile, Eve keeps calling Brian. He ignores her, saying he's busy with work. She insists they talk in person. When he visits her house, she tries to hug him, but he pushes her away. Eve asks for Nigerian naira 5 million, claiming it's urgent. Brian complains she's always asking for money but still agrees to send it. After dinner, Eve urges Brian to eat, but he's not interested. He returns home and surprises China with a gift address. He tells her they're going on a date. After the date, Brian tells China he loves her and never wants to be away from her again. The next day, Brian visits Eve unexpectedly. She ends a phone call quickly as he walks in. He tells her they need to break up. Shocked, she's about to respond when there's a knock at the door. 3 kids run in and call her mom. A man named Femi enters and thanks Brian for supporting them with money. Stunned, Brian realizes the truth. Without saying a word, he walks out. Eve yells at Femi, furious that he ruined her plans. Brian returns home, looks at China